Hello, people. I'm trying to hit a quota of going I'm trying to hit a quota of going live more time on my social media than what I have been. And mostly I've been doing it on Facebook and Instagram. So I'm trying to do YouTube and TikTok today. So I'm on two screens. Um, for any confusion, if people pop in and I'm not looking at what the heck? Not looking at the camera or whatever. But I wanted to talk about some of the stuff that we're working on leading up to the 2024 Olympics, and just as the industry starts to change, because change do be coming, whether or not it's consensual on our part or whether or not it ends up being forced by outside entities. The horse world is going to be changing dramatically over the next couple of years. And it needs to, otherwise we're going to get policed by outside organizations. So that is something that I firmly believe. um, but what I've noticed probably more so within like the last 2 years is that the more pressure that there is put on to create change in the horse industry, the more pushback we're seeing from individuals who feel frightened and attacked by that change. Um, so for anyone who's like going against the status quo in any capacity or serves to be like an outlier in the horse industry, regardless of whether or not you're actually openly pushing for change or if you're just being yourself, you're going to end up being a target for people's frustration and impatience that they're having with like how the industry is changing. So like for like TikTok has like a character limit for the title, so YouTube's title for this live is a lot more accurate. But I wanted to talk about like maintaining your confidence as things start to change, because um regardless of what like school of thought you are coming from when it comes to the horse industry, regardless of whether or not you believe there is need for welfare change in horse sports, regardless of your thoughts at all, it is important to develop enough of a sense of self that people cannot rock your confidence in yourself and your belief in doing right by your horse just with like a few comments. Um, because things are going to continue to change. And I mean, like, there's certain organizations that I am working alongside for welfare change, and that I largely agree with, but it doesn't mean I agree with their entire mission statement. And I'm also not I'm not, it doesn't make me angry that they have differing opinions. Like the World Bitless Association is an example. I don't think that bits should necessarily be outlawed, but I appreciate the fact that their MO and like the vision that they have for the future of the horse world is very welfare centered for horses. So regardless of whether or not we have the exact same goal, like their goal is in line with mine from the sense that they want to improve horse welfare. And I personally don't feel attacked by any of the posts that they make about bit abuse, because I am aware of the fact that they are vastly misused. And I don't misuse them myself. So when we're going into like specific policy changes with the horse sport and people are talking about issues in the horse world, what I'm noticing as someone who talks a lot about specific welfare issues in the horse world and things that I want to change is that people go out of their way to ram their little feet in a shoe that doesn't fit because they're so insecure in their perspective of themselves and what they offer to their horse, that they take any criticism of the horse industry at all as a personal attack, whether it applies to them or not. And I say this as someone who used to do this myself. Like I would feel super attacked by people questioning the status quo in the industry, and I would assume that they were talking about me when literally, like, in some cases it did apply to me. So like they literally were. But most of it was that I was deep down super insecure about certain things that I was doing with my horses. And the more that people became aware of horse welfare and the more that other people studied horse behavior and kind of put out information that questioned factors that I'd believed in for extended periods of time at this point, like we're talking like over a decade, right? Um, when they said things that made me question my own integrity and my own belief system, I got mad at them for the fact that I was made insecure about that. But the issue is actually from within myself. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is this is like a long-winded way of saying in the effort of welfare improvement, regardless of like what entities you're following for policy change, what I would really encourage people to do is to educate yourself enough as an equestrian that you can trust your own opinion and your own standards for how to measure your own horse's welfare, how to engage in harm reduction, to feel good about whatever it is that you're doing, and not take welfare improvement as a personal attack on yourself. Like, for example, I did a post on turnout recently, and how important it is for horses to have access to ad lib hay, how important socialization is for horses. And I shared studies to do this. People whose horses, like who they felt their horses didn't get enough turnout, felt attacked by this. And I every time I talk about turnout, I always get messages where people are essentially pleading their case to me and being like, oh, well, I do XYZ for my horse. They go out for XYZ amount of time. So this doesn't apply to them. And like, in situations like that, they're essentially looking for my reassurance to say, you're right, these studies don't apply to your horse's welfare, which I'm not going to say if it's not true. But that aside, like if you're doing the best you can for your horse, regardless of what studies are being shared and how valid they are, like people need to start learning about like harm reduction and being comfortable, um, bettering their horse's situation in whatever way that they can. Because like obviously land space is a huge issue when it comes to setting up horse welfare spaces, and that can be a huge barrier for people who might want to offer their horses more turnout, and that's definitely a thing. However, like I don't think that other people's inability to access better situations for their horse is a good enough argument against trying to push for change and change in the level of awareness of people when it comes to horse welfare in management, riding, etc. Um, the fact that not everyone can offer a perfect situation, I think that that's something to just keep people conscious of harm reduction while still um, maintaining the perspective that like you can improve your horse's welfare and that studies can be true and that certain things can be impactful to horse welfare without you being like a terrible person. Like there's so much nuance to these situations. Um and like even for people who can't offer their horses any turnout, or even if their horse only goes out for like 3 or 4 hours, guaranteed the awareness of how that might impact the horse physically and mentally, even just having that awareness without changing any other management principles, will better the horse's life, even if just by that person being more patient, and kind to their horse when they're being reactive because of their needs not being met. And I think that's the important thing, is having an awareness of how certain factors of horse care and maintenance might impact the horse's responding behavior is a part of how we improve the horse welfare overall, because the more aware people become of management situations and what horses need to be really fulfilled and have their needs met, the more able we'll be to create more boarding facilities that actually fulfill those needs. But there's not going to be change in those environments if we don't educate people enough to believe that there is need for change. For the person asking what certain certifications I have, I'm IAABC certified. And then, yeah, there's a couple of other questions on the TikTok one. Do you still jump? Like on and off. Like right now, my horses are not fit for jumping, and Banksy's only just turning 5 this year. So I'm not really in a rush, like I'm just chilling. What are your thoughts on Icelandic horse riding and the 20/25% weight limit being pushed? I really don't know enough about that to speak on it. I'm so far removed from the culture of that show organization that I don't really want to speak on it until I look further into it. Because we don't really have many Icelandic horses here, and we don't, like, as far as I know, there's not really a lot of competitions for them in my area, if at all. Um, so I would be hesitant to say anything until I look further into it. But yeah, like overall, like even like with weight studies like that too, like there needs to be more research done on horses across the board, because it'll either confirm a lot of the things that we already know to be true, or it could offer an alternative perspective. And this is kind of where I stand with like anyone who thinks that I have like that I am too rigid in my views or whatever. Like I'm open to being proven wrong. Like I would love for studies to like say that stalling isn't as impactful to horse welfare as what they've currently been showing, because it would be better off for the horses if it actually wasn't. But like where it stands now is like I'm not inclined to kind of cling to an idea and believe it without evidence when there's evidence to the contrary, if that makes sense. And this is why like I really hope that we get more funding in the equine science field so that more studies can really have a lot of time and money put into them to test all sorts of different variables, because with anything relating to horses there's just so many variables involved, and to get like a really fully encompassing view we need to test a lot of different things. And what I have noticed in like the welfare sector in particular is there is a huge lack of studies in specific areas of horse care and maintenance, and training. And I think it correlates with what is most profitable in the industry and what people wish to enable in the showing environment. Like, for example, um, there's still some studies available on like hoof health and like shoes versus barefoot, testing different types of shoeing materials, testing different types of shoeing packages, testing the impact of different environments on the foot. There's some studies, but with how crucial to horse soundness we know hoof health to be, and for how long we've been doing a lot of the same tactics in farriery, it's really weird that there aren't more studies. And I think that this comes down to the fact that if certain things were publicized and studied to the extent that they should be, it would collapse a lot of belief systems in the industry that there is financial interest in upholding. Um, I think that this is also why that there's like a very limited amount of studies on like bits versus bitless, for example. Like there's more studies coming out, but like for how centered these things are in the horse industry culture, it is super weird that there is not more information and testing done on it. And I don't think that that is a mistake. I think it is a deliberate choice on the part of the industry. And I think that there's a lot of financial motivators in play that a lot of people don't necessarily want to admit to. And honestly, this is one of my biggest frustrations with the FEI in particular. Whenever I criticize the FEI, like there's usually at least one person that's always like, oh, well, if it was like unethical, it wouldn't be allowed in competition and it wouldn't be winning. And when we're giving a governing organization that is at its core, it's a multi-billion-dollar organization, right? When we're giving them enough power and faith that we believe simply because they are allowing something to happen that it must be ethical, there is a problem. And the same applies to with like really successful trainers. I've also heard the similar logic applied where they'll be like, oh, like they wouldn't be that successful if what they're doing is abusive. But like across the board in every industry in the world, there is no correlation between success and making lots of money and being well known and famous and being ethical. Like if anything, I bet the correlation with the amount of money being earned and the amount of ethicality involved to earn that money is on a negative trend. The more money you make, the less ethicality is involved, because when you get to the point of making billions of dollars, odds are to get that sum of money and to continue bringing it in, you're having to cut some corners when it comes to ethics. Like, I'm just going to be blunt here. And what I find really interesting is the number of people who get upset when I bash billionaires, because it's like I know for a fact that no one watching any of my shit is a billionaire. Like none of them. But yet people are ride or die for billionaires. Even though guaranteed they're suffering in some aspect of their life because of other people hoarding wealth and resources, but they still go to war to defend billionaires. And I think it's because deep down they think that one day they could become one. But here's the thing, you're never going to be a fucking billionaire. No one is. Like, no one watching my shit is ever going to be a fucking billionaire. Ever. You might end up being a millionaire one day, but that is a lot different than a billionaire. So let's just stop right there and stop defending billionaires, because billionaire corporations are pretty much guaranteed to cut corners in some capacity when it comes to ethics. A great example of this is Andreas Helgstrand, the documentary on him that came out with all the abuse that he has done to his horses. I cannot stress enough how many people were completely fucking aware of what he was doing to horses for a number of years, and how many high-profile people in positions at the FEI were completely aware of what he was doing to horses, and they covered it up and didn't want people to know. It is an intentional move. They're protecting people that serve to make them the most money. And the other problem is that these billionaire entities also have a lot of control over media organizations. So they're actually controlling what we're seeing. And then, like, this goes back to what I was saying about studies. The funding of studies, these types of people that are big figures in the horse world and seek to profit off of keeping things the way that they are, um, they're not going to fund studies that conflict with their ideals and what they want people to believe and how they can keep doing things, right? They're going to fund studies that say the opposite and that are going to make their lives easier rather than harder. To the person asking what's the best course to take to learn true up-to-date equine behavior, I really like the Guelph University courses. All of their courses are great and they have really great professors. So that's what I'd recommend. But there's a lot of different ones, and there's also like you can learn for free. Like personally for me, one of the biggest like bonuses of doing a university course in specific is getting access to the university library, because you get access to thousands of studies on basically any topic you can imagine, and you can download them like the PDF file of the study while you're a university student. Whereas when you're not, a lot of these studies aren't open access, so you cannot access the full information without either paying for it or being a university student. And that also kind of goes hand in hand with like the elitism and billionaires and the problem of like hoarding wealth, yada, yada, yada. Education should be accessible to everybody. The fact that we even have a framework set up that prevents people from accessing information unless they pay for it is incredibly fucked up, and it feeds into the ignorance. And I think that's also an intentional move so that the people in the power classes can withhold information from people who do not have the money to access it. And to the person saying about the equine behavior course specifically being quite outdated, I took it back in 2016. I took their advanced equine behavior course like 3 years ago, and I didn't find it to be outdated. But with that said, like honestly, as soon as a course begins, it's pretty much guaranteed to be outdated at that point because information is constantly expanding. So the curriculum is always likely to be like at least a little bit behind current modern day scientific findings. Um, but I didn't find it to be outdated in the sense that I didn't find it to be like sharing problematic information that is harmful to horse welfare. I didn't find that to be the case at all. With that said, there's a lot of different resources you can get, and honestly, with any course, I would recommend like doing your own outside studying and getting your like getting looking at studies and accessing whatever you can to continue learning, because like at the end of the day when you're taking a class, it's about learning like how to continue your own education as much as it is about learning the material in front of you. Like you should be learning how to critically think and consider like the impact. Okay, I'm gonna try to turn this off. I'm gonna turn my Wi-Fi on and off because I don't know why TikTok is doing this to me because I'm literally on my Wi-Fi. But yeah, so like education should be about teaching people how to critically think and source information to continue their education. And I also think that this is what like riding instructors should be teaching their students too. Um, any riding instructor who doesn't give their students the skills to problem solve on their own and continue their education, and any riding instructor who is not okay with people questioning them, really needs to like up their game, because like we should be equipping equestrians with the skill sets that they need to problem solve themselves and to make shaping plans themselves for training and be able to question their superiors on specific topics and have it be educational. But there's this narrative that has been created in the horse world where it's like viewed as disrespectful or ignorant to question authority figures and basically fact check them. You're supposed to blindly like follow what you're told and never question anything, but that's not what true good learning is about. Like that's not how you better your education. And it's like even a thing in the school systems, like growing up, they want you to basically be within the confines of the curriculum. If you question authority or you question what you're being taught or you're a divergent thinker, you're largely punished for it. And I've noticed the same thing in the horse world. And like, I mean, this also plays into the fact that I'm neurodivergent, right? So like the way that I think and perceive things is going to be inherently different from someone else. To the person asking, do you think that horse Twitter as a whole helps the equestrian community or hinders it? Honestly, like I think all social media as a whole is beneficial from the standpoint of it allows other ideas to be shared. It allows people to potentially access studies and articles that they had no idea existed. Social media is a large part of the reason why I had the changes um in heart that I did for like my training is because it pushed me in the direction of discovering information that I then went on to like study more intensively. So I think that part's good, but I have a bone to pick with any social media where it's very easy to essentially hide your identity, because then I think there's a lot of cowardice involved where people end up bullying other people and saying things that they absolutely would not say if they had their face attached to it. And I think that's a problem. Like online, I try to conduct myself in a way where I'm not saying things that I would not be comfortable saying to someone directly to their face in person. Um, People can say what they will about me, but like go watch the entire like stream from the Paris seminar and watch me talking to the FEI director of solidarity, and I think we can all agree that like I pretty clearly will say what I say online to anyone in person. And like my voice shakes, I'm nervous and I get stressed doing it sometimes. It's not that it doesn't give me anxiety, but I'm careful to only say things that I'm comfortable saying to people's faces. Um, and that's a motto I try to stick by. And it's like the same thing with anyone who comes on my pages and is hypercritical of me. If they have their face attached and they're actually saying it with their full chest, I respect it. Even if they're saying mean shit, I respect the fact that they're doing it with their identity attached. When people make fake accounts or they essentially just come on and speak to me in a very disrespectful ad hominem attacky way that I don't operate with, like again, like people can say what they will about me, but when I'm attacking ideas that I disagree with, I'm targeting the argument. I'm never like, oh, like you're just a shitty rider, or like that's an ugly hat that you're wearing, you know? Like I attack the argument because I believe in what I'm saying so much that like I can debate regardless of whether or not people agree with whatever the fuck I'm saying. I try to stay away from logical fallacies because it's bad arguing and it's not educational for people. So I'd say that's the biggest issue that I have with social media is just the cowardice involved, and how people can essentially scare other people away from posting and sharing their opinions when they otherwise would. And I think that's really sad because I get a lot of messages from people who are like, I'd really like to share what I'm doing with my horse, but I've been bullied for it and people have been really mean to me. And that's sad. Like, and I disagree with that from the standpoint of even if people are being incredibly shitty to you, give them the fucking middle finger and just do post whatever the fuck you want. The people that are spending their time shitting all over you, it's a projection of something within, honestly. Just do it. Like Nike. To the person saying, did you see Anna's video speaking about you? I'm sure you have. Yeah, a bunch of people sent it to me, but I'm going to be completely honest. I did not watch the whole thing because for my own mental health, it's just like, I don't fucking care. Like, I'm going to be blunt. Like, I don't care. People can say whatever they want about me. They don't have to consume my content. They don't have to watch any of my videos. So if my videos are making them that upset, to the point where like I live rent free in their heads, I think from a mental health standpoint, they should probably block me and move on with their life, because I think that we should have enough security in ourselves and how we show up for our horses and our belief systems in the horse world that someone else can't derail you to the point where you are just like upset by them. And people can come on and try to say like, "Oh, but you do that to Clinton Anderson." One important thing I want people to note about my content is that what I take issue with is actual specific actions that are impactful to other beings. So abusive training practices. It's not tone policing how people go about their advocacy or saying that they're too extreme, because that's none of my fucking business. I in the past, I definitely have done that, and it was because I was insecure as hell, and I didn't have any faith in my own ability to really, like, look at what I was doing for my horses and be like, "I feel good about myself for this." So, I projected that insecurity onto everyone else around me and made my insecurity their problem to essentially, like, plead my case to them or to other people and get the affirmation from other outside entities to be like, "Oh, yeah, you're totally right. That person's just a dumbass bitch, like, who cares?" But, like, that's the thing is, like, it's not actually about me, it's about a personal insecurity because, like, Clinton Anderson could come in like, he could fucking call my personal phone number and be like, "You're a stupid bitch, I hate you, and you suck at training," and it wouldn't change how I feel about myself, you know? Um like, it's just, like, it's a projection of how people are feeling internally because realistically, like, a lot of the people who criticize my content the most are really clear to say, like, that I'm a nobody in the horse world and that I don't know what I'm doing and that like, they say things that are, like, digs at my knowledge and, like, the information that I'm putting out. And if that were actually true, they probably wouldn't spend so much time thinking about it and trying to plead their case because they would go, "I know in my heart that she is completely wrong," and then they would move on. Um, but they don't. So they don't actually think I'm a nobody because if I was a nobody, it'd be easy to ignore. It's like watching a toddler argue something with you and you're like, "You're 4 years old, you don't know what you're talking about," you know? Like, if people don't think I know what I'm talking about, anything I should say should be like the easiest thing ever to ignore, and I should just fade into irrelevance. But that doesn't happen. And it's going like what I can guarantee people is that level of irritation with people like me and how much time people dedicate to discussing these things, it's only going to get worse. The more the industry is pushed to change and the more pressure people are under to reevaluate how they show up for their horses and how they train and how they take care of their horses, the more pressure people feel about all of those things, um, the more angry they are going to get and the more they're going to lash out at those around them because they're feeling frustrated internally. So then they lash out behaviorally to those around them and oftentimes seek external affirmation and reassurance. Because this is another thing that I've noticed is that and I mean, sometimes I do get a little blunt online, so that can be a fair criticism, but when I hold my ground in an argument, even if it's with like people who are like 30 years my senior, right? When I hold my ground and maintain my position and don't give them any leeway with theirs in terms of me agreeing with it because I think that they're wrong, they view this as an act of unkindness. They view this as a personal attack and as me being rude to hold my position and my belief rather than accepting theirs as valid. Um, and disagreement isn't a personal attack. Like you can completely disagree with them and it doesn't mean that people dislike you. Like someone like Clinton Anderson, I'll admit I do dislike him because I think he is a dick for a number of reasons. But otherwise, like I don't really disagree. Like I don't dislike the people that I'm criticizing. I might dislike their actions in specific situations, but I don't know them enough to hate or dislike them. And I don't like it's not about them as a person, you know? Like I wouldn't spend the time that I do talking about these welfare improvement topics if I didn't actually fully believe that people have the capacity to learn and do better. Because if I thought that they could not change, it it would be pointless to try to advocate for better because it would be a lost cause. But I think that people have the ability to reform their thinking in any situation. Even people that I vehemently disagree with, mind you, it's not even just people who are more closely aligned with me. Like I think anyone has the ability to change because I used to have completely different views than I do now. Like who I was 5-10 years ago, even just like a few years ago, is completely different than who I am now. Um, and the other thing to consider is that like no one is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. Sometimes people will lose their patience, and it's about how you recover and repair from those lapses in judgment and how you show up for the world and like your horses and people around you. It's about how you recover from those things and how you hold yourself accountable that actually matters. It's not about never making a mistake. Like even as I started to get more into science-based horse training, it's not like I just snapped my fingers one day and I was like, I'm going to do positive reinforcement now and I'm going to like completely try to like um lower the amount of aversives that I use almost entirely, you know? Like I didn't just like click my heels together like Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz and have it be something that I just was able to do just then. Like it took practice. I would have lapses in judgment. I would get frustrated. I would go back to what was comfortable and familiar to me, which was the type of training that is negative reinforcement, right? It's what I did for like most of my riding career. And like I'm 28 and I've been riding since I was 4 years old. So for the vast majority of my riding, even still today, even with my different perspectives today, I was learning how to do things in a completely traditional way and a very highly punishing way. Because I would say that the trainers that I learned from were really harsh and punishing in the way that they trained. Like they used negative reinforcement really poorly and really harshly and in a way that I would personally consider abusive in a lot of cases. Um, and that's what the majority of my riding career was comprised of. So like there's no way you can go from like over a decade of learning something in one specific way to doing something completely different without making mistakes. And I think that this is where people get lost in this discussion, is that they think that there's a level of perfection being demanded when no, it's like it's about accountability. Like if you're going to use negative reinforcement, do whatever you want. But if you want to use that and have the comfort of being able to say that it's not aversive, and have people agree with you on that and have people like be like, yeah, you're totally right. You're not owed that. Like people don't need to coddle you to the point of lying blatantly to your face just to make you feel good. Um, if the idea of using aversives in training bother you, then it's like reevaluate what reinforcers you use. That's a you problem. It has nothing to do with anyone else properly identifying aspects of operant conditioning just because it hurts your feelings. If at its core, hearing about the science of how our training actually works and impacts the horse hurts your feelings, then the issue is within you, and you need to reflect on what you would be comfortable with in training and what you view as unfair in training. So, for example, if people don't like the idea of having their primary reinforcer be the removal of aversives, it's fully within their power to choose a different type of reinforcer. What isn't within their power is curating such an echo chamber online and controlling the content other people produce to the point where they're never made uncomfortable by it. And this is the thing, like over the years, the older I've gotten, the less I care about making people uncomfortable. You're not entitled to comfort. And I would say that this is like one of the biggest problems that I have with a lot of attitudes online, is that people feel entitled to comfort to such a point where they feel like it is their job and like their right to try to control what other people share and try to label the sharing of information as an attack on them and their belief system simply because it makes them feel insecure. Um, and like honestly, the reason why stuff like this gets me so heated is that like these same tactics have been used for like centuries to try to deflect from conversations about ethics and welfare improvement across the board in a way that largely discriminates against people of color and marginalized groups. And it's this idea of the right to comfort to the point where you're never having to face information that makes you question your belief system or makes you feel uncomfortable. And there's a lot of people who feel so entitled to comfort that difficult conversations just shouldn't happen in their presence. Um, and it honestly enables a lot of really harmful mindsets, whether or not the people who are made uncomfortable are directly participating in them or not. No one is entitled to comfort to such a degree that they never have to encounter things that make them uncomfortable. The best parts of my learning that I've had as a horse person have occurred because I have been made uncomfortable and pushed outside of my comfort zone in order to learn them. And a lot of times I resisted initially and I got mad and I lashed out, and it was because I felt insecure and that I didn't want to admit that I knew an awful lot less than I thought I did. Um, and I also didn't want to have to completely reevaluate the way that I was going about handling horses and training horses and have to like let go of these belief systems that I'd held for so long. It was like so uncomfortable to do. Um, but it was necessary. And like the other thing too is that like the sad reality is whether or not you personally choose to buy into credible research on how the decisions we make impact the horses that we work with, whether or not you choose to buy into the research, it doesn't change the impact of what you're doing and how it feels to your horse. That's the sad reality. When I was in denial about like all of the training gadgets that I used to use and how they negatively impacted my horse, my denial didn't make things more comfortable for my horse. It made me comfortable at the expense of my horse's discomfort. And like this is the other thing is like people online all over the place are arguing and fighting for their right to cause their horses blatant discomfort. And they feel entitled to doing that because they'll use excuses like, oh, they were bad, they need to be put in their place, this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, okay, so you feel entitled to causing the animals you work with deliberate discomfort, but you can't handle people having differing perspectives that make you question where you stand on things. Like, cry me a fucking river. If you're gonna go put any type of equipment on your horse and like sit on them and make them work through any like in any capacity, if you're going to show up and train horses in the way that is most typical in the industry, you need to put on your big adult pants and learn how to deal with the discomfort that has differing opinions, because like at its core, like all of us to some extent have caused horses discomfort in the decisions that we've made, whether we continue to do that or not. And if we can't handle being made uncomfortable in the sharing of information, it's like we're being little whiny piss babies and we need to grow up. Because it's like that's just, yeah, like I would rather be made uncomfortable and have access to information that makes me reconsider my biases and like be basically perpetually smothered by that information than to be coddled the rest of my life and be placated by people around me telling me that there's no need for me to reconsider my perspective. Um, and that's kind of where I stand currently with like a lot of the viewpoints I have. Like most of the criticisms that I see people have against like newer horse training methods, like rewards based methods, are not founded in research at all. It's all personal e- opinion and conjecture. And until there is some level of validity behind those sentiments, I'm not going to accept them as an all encompassing fact. And like, even with my current belief systems, if studies came out that were like, actually, like, positive reinforcement causes horses way more stress and it is an inferior way of training. And if credible research came out that actually conflicted with all of the things saying the opposite of that, then my perspective would change at that point. Um, but what I don't see the point of is like arguing based off of the logic of like, oh, but what if? It's like, what if freaking pigs started flying tomorrow? It's not happening currently, so who cares, you know? Like the idea that certain information may come about if it's further researched, like having curiosity is good, but the belief that that should impact the decisions you make with the current knowledge available, I think is inherently flawed. We should be making decisions based off of like credible research and um, basically like um, we should be making like decisions off of like what is in front of us currently rather than what we hope comes about in further research. And I find that a huge portion of the horse world is so like connected and identifies so heavily with their belief systems that they're like waiting and holding on to the hope that the science that contradicts their belief systems is going to be disproven one day. And they use that as their primary means of completely shutting down considering different perspectives. um, which is just like weird because like I don't know, like until I actually started trying different training methods that I would have called like woo woo and like like stupid. Like until I actually started trying them myself, like I didn't actually fully believe in them or see how they worked, but then the scientific evidence along with, like, actually me before my very eyeballs, seeing how things worked and how my horses responded to them, like, it just clarified everything for me and made it, like, very clear that I was headed down the right path, and this is largely what, like, maintains my confidence in holding the viewpoints that I have. And I think that also that confidence and that belief in myself and my ability to handle it if I'm disproven in further research and if the perspectives change. I think that bothers a lot of people because they're not ready to change their perspectives, even if research really heavily disagreed with their current perspectives. But I've already had my world crash down once before and had to change all of my viewpoints of the horse world and really reevaluate the way that I showed up for horses. I've already had to do that, so I'm honestly not afraid of it happening again if research changes and proves me wrong. Like it's not a scary concept to have to reflect and completely reevaluate how I look at horse training and the care of horses because I've already had to do that. So it doesn't frighten me. And I'm open to the idea that science can continue to modernize and like our perspectives of horses might change as a result. But I'm like I've already had to do the heavy reevaluating of like my belief system and having like basically the cloak pulled away from my eyes and having to like see things through a different lens and a different light. And the idea of ever having to do that again and having to reconsider my own biases no longer scares me to the extent that it would have in the past. So I'm prepared to be like proven wrong. Like honestly, like if the studies come out tomorrow that are like question a lot of my core belief systems that I currently hold for horses, then those core belief systems would change. Like they're all malleable. The way that I perceive horse behavior is following current evidence through research. And the more that changes and becomes better, the more my perspective on horses is going to change. And like already there's a lot of shit that I've found about horses that has been really kind of disappointing and disconcerting from the standpoint of like I can no longer participate in the horse world in the way that I was comfortable doing before I knew the things that I did. Um and now like since my perspectives have changed, there's certain things that I just can no longer justify. Uh because of what I have learned about horses. Like and like this is where I've offended people deeply because of things that I say, but I stand by a lot of them. Like I did a post on Facebook a while ago where I said that like if I had to like split up my horses and stall them again or put them in like individual isolated living situations, I would either like sell them to someone who could keep them out in a herd or I would move them as far away as I needed to in order for them to have access to those lifestyles. And that pissed a lot of people off, but like that's the truth of how I would handle things now because the idea of separating my horses who have such deep bonds with each other and who have lived out 24/7 on large land that they can wander around and have free will and free access to hay. The idea of destroying that and what I have brought for them for their happiness just for my own gain and my own selfish reasons, just so I can have them around me. That knowledge of how it would impact their behavior and how much less happy they would be completely halts me in my tracks of even considering doing things like that. And I just can't do it anymore. Um, so like where I stand with stuff like that is like it's like yeah, if I couldn't provide my horses with a lifestyle that I felt was ethical and just for them and if I had to disrupt their life to the point where I thought their welfare would be substantially impacted, then I would reevaluate whether or not I should have those animals and whether or not like I'm the right person to take care of them. Um and I think the reason why people get so defensive and angry when I say things like that is because they know that they're not in the same perspective. Like them keeping their horse matters more to them than providing a species appropriate lifestyle for the horse. So looking at someone who would handle things differently than them makes them feel inherently insecure. And then you see behaviors that are about displacing that level of insecurity and discontent onto the person who caused that discomfort, which is the person who posed an idea that kind of forced them to reckon with the decisions that they might make themselves in a similar situation. But like decisions that I make for my personal horses are like they're my own, you know? Like, what I think would be best for them is not, like, a statement on other people's horses, and it's also my belief systems. Um, so what I hope for the horse world, honestly, is that, like, we start to curate training programs and belief systems where students have enough faith in their own ability to problem solve and look further into things and learn about horses so that they're not so deeply impacted by other people sharing their belief systems and the way that they would go about doing things. Um, because it's frankly, like, ridiculous, honestly, at times, like, it's just, like, I don't know if anyone's seen, like, those Ben Affleck memes where he just looks so done with the world. That's me sometimes when I, like, share studies and scientific information and people get mad at the fact that I have shared information that conflicts with their personal beliefs, and they take it out on me when I didn't conduct the studies. I'm just freaking sharing them, and yeah, I believe in their merit, but, like, why are you mad about information being shared? Um, and, like, it makes me wanna do the heavy face palm because I'm just like, "Come on, like, we can't coddle ourselves to the point of not having the sharing of information." And I mean, like, there's studies that people have shared that I've thought weren't well conducted and that I personally didn't hold as much weight in, and where I'd kind of put, like, a little pin in them and be like, "I'm gonna keep an eye on this information and see what else comes out, and then reflect on this information then." Rather than taking it as a hard and fast fact. And people can do that. Like, if you believe in your heart that horses don't suffer at all when they're isolated from other horses for their whole lives, then freaking you do you, boo. Go about your life and ignore the people who say otherwise and be confident in doing that. Um, and if you can't do that, then like what I would encourage people to do is to really hone in on the part of yourself that is made uncomfortable by that information and ask yourself why it is there. Because if you truly believe that you are doing everything you can for your horse and that you're providing them the best case scenario within your power, you shouldn't allow that belief to get dismantled by some other outside entity. Um, like with my own horses, there's aspects of their care that I wish I could improve, but right now as like a renter, it's not practical. It's not realistic. It's not a good idea to put thousands of dollars into someone else's land that I'm not going to stay at forever. So I'm content with the concessions that I have to make in their care where things aren't perfectly ideal because I know that most of their needs are met. And I know that I'm doing the best that I can with the resources that I have. So I'm okay with it, you know? Like um, if I had my own property one day, like I would put a lot more money into drainage and putting in permanent crusher dust footing and different types of footing for horses to walk across to help with their hoof health, like rocks and like creeks. And I would put way more money into putting in permanent enrichment. But since I rent, I don't see the purpose in doing that. With like planting trees, making creeks, building hills, putting in thousands of dollars of like footing to make what I envision as being the ideal. Um, if I were to do that at a rental property, then I would be doing it and basically lighting on fire a lot of money that I could be using to put towards the eventual goal of being able to own a property that I could put that into myself. So, like, I live with it for the time being, and, like, I mean, before I moved, I was a lot less happy with, like, my horse's living situation because it wasn't, like, a big enough area for them, and it was just kinda like yeah, like, it was kinda boring, and, like, I wanted them to have more, but now, like, I'm actually pretty happy with what they have access to. Um, and the things that I'm not happy with, I'm just like, I can deal with that because it's better than, like, the alternative of if I were to, like, board them out somewhere else. Um, I can offer them a better lifestyle by having them at home and having them in the situation that I have rather than boarding them out, and I'm content with that. So, I get like I've had people shit all over me by being like, "Oh, like your horses have mud." And it's like, "Yeah, in the high traffic areas there's mud because I live in a fucking rainforest." But they have dry areas that they can seek and stand on, and we rotate the fields as much as possible. When we get atmospheric rivers, it's just kind of like you're kind of screwed because that amount of rain in any amount of time, unless you have like superior drainage, it's gonna mess up your shit. But it drains pretty quickly so long as it stops raining. And that's like one of the challenges of living in my area. And the way a lot of people deal with that challenge is by having like these tiny little postage stamp sized paddocks that are crusher dust. So they tend to stay less muddy, but the horse can't move around and is largely alone and doesn't have access to group turnout. So while they have like the bonus of better footing in theory, there's a lot of sacrifices that are being made that are actually more impactful and detrimental to welfare, than having your horse get a little dirty when they're out in the field. And like also with group turnout too, another thing that I've seen people be concerned about is their horses getting like marked up from being outside, like getting like running through trees and getting like a little abrasion on them, or one of their friends biting them and getting like a bite mark. And I mean, like, if your horse is out in a healthy, stable herd, they shouldn't be getting the crap beat out of them on a frequent basis. But yeah, sometimes they sometimes they do get scratched up. And it's kind of like the equivalent of having like toddlers. Like your toddler scraping their knee on the playground doesn't mean that they shouldn't be at the playground socializing with other kids, having a good time. Is it unfortunate? Sure. Is it kind of sad to see them in pain or like sad about this minor treatable injury? Sure. But is the alternative of depriving them of that much enjoyment in their life and that much enrichment and engagement and things that will make them a healthy creature? Um, is that a lot sadder? Yes. Yes, indeed. Uh, so that's kind of like where I stand with like anything, like any of the ways that I'm inconvenienced. Like, honestly, like I literally have to walk a fucking kilometer down to my horses. That's one way, a kilometer, which like it's way less than a mile. I don't know the difference, so like people can look that up if they care. Um, but, like, I walk a kilometer, like, it's a good distance to get down to the horses, but I do it because it is what's best for them. Like, it would be lovely to have them right outside my window where I could see them easily and, like, have it be more convenient or have, like, be able to drive, like, a farm vehicle down all the time, that would be lovely. But that's not what I have, and it's like I'm willing to inconvenience myself on their behalf. Because like, also, I don't have access to an arena unless I haul them off property, which, like, I'm lucky that I have my own trailer, so, like, I can do, but it is, like that's, like, a whole thing. If I wanna take them off property and go riding, it's like a day trip, Like, I gotta hitch the trailer, I gotta load them up, I gotta drive there, I gotta unload them, I gotta tack them up, I gotta ride them, then I gotta load them up again, and then I gotta drive home, and yeah. It's this whole thing. But, like, their living situation is a lot better than what it would be if I had them in a situation where I had more access to certain amenities, but they'd have to have less as a result. Um, and that's just not something that I'm willing to do because, like, for a while, like, when I first started riding and I had my Arabian, it would be like, we're looking for show barns that have, like, an indoor arena. Um and like are set up for me to be able to do what I want, but they weren't well set up for the horses. And I didn't even consider how the living situations would like impact my horse. It was all about me and like getting access to the facilities that I wanted for myself. And I don't do that anymore because like the repercussions of not meeting their needs like in behavioral change are just not worth it. And also like now that I know the things I know, I can't go back to that, like, blissful, ignorant mindset to be okay with that. But, like, would I like to have an arena? Yeah. Yeah, it would be really nice and convenient to have an arena on the property, but, it is what it is. Like, you gotta deal with the facilities that you have, and, like, I would rather go hacking around in the trails behind their field and have them out on the amount of land that they have than have an indoor arena and have them out all separate in little paddocks. So, um, it sucks sometimes, like, more so in the winter. Like, in the summertime, it's really not bad because I can, like, work them on varying terrain and, like, up and down hills, and that's honestly pretty cool. But in the wintertime, yeah, it does kinda suck. It does kinda suck walking a kilometer to go feed my horses, in the pouring rain in a Pacific Northwest winter. That does kinda suck. So, but it is what it is. It's like you gotta choose your difficult, you know? Like, I would rather my difficult be me making those type of in like, those type of concessions in what I have facility-wise, but have my horses be happier than have my difficult be horses who are responding to a lack of their needs being met and are dangerous as a result and much more difficult to handle. So, I'd rather my difficult be having to be more outside in the rain and having a shittier time in the winter, than have horses who are responding to not having their needs met. But long term, like, it would be nice to not have to pick, you know? It would be nice to just have all of the above. And long term, that, like, is really one of my biggest goals, and that's why I'm kind of, like, so set on, like, my life goal being, like, to get, like, a farm. Like, I quite frankly do not give a shit about, like, getting married or, like, finding a nice person, like, that would be, like, a bonus. I just want a farm, and, like, I intend to get it with or without another person helping me. And this has been, like, something that I have wanted since I was, like, a child, which is, like, a really weird goal to have, is to just, like, be a homeowner and, like, buy your own place. But I was ahead of my time, and that is, like, my biggest priority long term. Because for me to set up the type of situation that I'd like to have for, like, behavior modification for, like, complex horse behavioral cases, and be able to take on all different types of horses and like have it be, like, better set up for that and have better facilities, and also set it up in a way that I could kind of, like, also target, like, the show crowd that doesn't that's less comfortable with the idea of, like, group turnout for their horses, to target that crowd and have it set up in a way where it can slowly transition the owner to be comfortable with having their horses out in a herd setting. So, like, ideally, like, in and out paddocks with a stall, but having the horses always have access to the paddocks and having the paddocks be large with shared fence lines, that sort of thing, just to slowly, like, transition them into a lifestyle, like, on a track system that, like mostly, like, acclimating the owner to that lifestyle rather than the horse. And then also having, like, the amenities so that people don't have to choose between, like, having their horses in a species appropriate lifestyle and having access to, like, an arena. So that's, like, the long-term goal, but that's gonna be, like, a trek and a half. Because, like, holy shit, like, the cost of living has been outpacing my patience and my work ethic for years, and I think I speak for, like, my entire generation in saying that it's absolutely absurd. Like, we're the most educated generation to date, and we work the most hours, and yet, like, we see the least amount of ability with the money that we make because of the cost of living being so inflated compared to what it was in generations before us. Um, and anyways, this is kind of circling back to my hatred of billionaires because, like, I don't really, like, call me radical, but I don't think that, like, Jeff Bezos deserves having a ferry-sized yacht or several of them more than people deserve to eat. Not to be, like, a silly little leftist snowflake, but, like, I don't know, like, I think that, like, food is more important than owning, like, entire housing chains and just, like, hoarding resources. Like, I think people deserve to eat and have a roof over their head a little bit more than people deserve to have all of these little toys that they're buying with billions of dollars to fill a void inside their heart that money's not gonna fill. Um, so, like, that's also, like, a big bone to pick that I have, and honestly, that kinda goes in tandem with a lot of my issues with the horse world, because a lot of the problems that I have with the horse world are directly influenced by money and people's desire to profit as much as possible, and just, like, elitist mindsets and just, yeah, the entire capitalistic system. I think that is the evil behind a lot of the issues that we have. in the horse world as well. So like it all kind of comes back to people valuing production and like output more than they do ethics. And I just think it's silly. Like I don't think that like for me, the fact that I'm sitting in a house right now and like my house is standing and that I have food in the fridge, a lot of that is just kind of luck of being born into like the right country and the right family where this has been something that I've always had access to. This isn't to say that I've had every privilege in the book, but like I'm not any more deserving of the things that I have than people who are living on the streets right now. Like, I just happen to be here under a roof. I'm not any more deserving of having this type of lifestyle than anyone else. I'm just more fortunate than they are. And I hope one day that I live to see the type of world where, like, we have a community set up where we want everybody to get access to basic human needs and have that be what we value in society over like just like this everyone for themselves mentality, um and perpetuating the notion that if you work hard enough bad things won't happen to you, because that's simply not true. I would love to see that mindset change in my lifetime, and I'm not fully convinced at all that it's going to, because I think that the only thing that's going to really create mass change is like probably a pretty big revolution. So yeah, I suppose we'll see. But a lot of these things are interconnected. And like I know I like when I've brought this up before, people will be like, oh, like you're crazy, like you're just like seeing connections that aren't there. But like, no, it is. Like even the sheer fact that a lot of people lose their patience on their horses and are really harsh and abusive to them, like that type of anger and frustration is coming from somewhere, you know, like they're behind every behavior, there's an underlying motivation. And we have like a population of very frustrated people who are not having their basic needs met and are responding to the environment accordingly. Um, and if we were to meet their needs and have them feel more fulfilled and have life be not just about production and like survival and just like affording the bare minimum to survive and having to work yourself to the bone to do that, I think a lot of people would be able to approach things in a much less rigid, like results based mindset. They would just be able to enjoy the journey and kind of enjoy the process of things. But because we have so many people who feel pressured to kind of participate in their own production to the extent of like, I need to do this for survival, I have a job. People don't care about your feelings. You have to work when you're sick. Da, 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 da. I think that gets projected onto our animals, because like we don't feel like our needs are met, and like people value like our ability to yeah access them. So like I don't know, and this is like a very radical opinion for this day and age, but it's just like yeah, like people shouldn't have to be useful in society to deserve the basics for survival. And we're letting a lot of people down by perpetuating that mindset, and also animals because it gets projected onto horses. This is kind of the same type of deal as like what I said in one of my posts about mares, about misogyny being projected onto mares and our perspective of mares. We also project like our lifestyle views and like how we've been forced to participate in society. We project that onto our animals as well, so it's all connected. But yeah, I could talk about this till I'm blue in the face. Fuck all billionaires. They all suck. None of them are ethical. You cannot be an ethical billionaire. Sorry to upset people. Not even Taylor Swift. Um, you can love her music and you can love what she stands for as a person, I guess, in some ways. But at the end of the day, it's like when you're hoarding that amount of resources while people are starving, it's not really obtained ethically. And there's also a reason why none of these billionaires are putting their money and platforms towards advocating for causes that actually matter and advocating for people who don't have voices and are like minority marginalized groups. They don't use their platforms for that and they could. And even just like the sheer act of literally just saying one thing, like you could post a one-liner sentence tweet, and if you're someone who's really prevalent in society and has like millions of people following you and watching your every move, even just like putting that one idea out there can incite a lot of change. But like, despite it really being that easy, a lot of people choose not to. And my platform is nowhere near that large, and I'm also not even within the same stratosphere of being a billionaire. Like if a billionaire is planet Earth, I'm in one of the millions of other galaxies, like way over there, like many, many light years away. But like I think it's important for me to use my platform for things that are important and to try to talk about and platform issues that aren't adequately being discussed. And I think it would be a waste of my following to not do that. Uh, so I don't ever intend to stop doing that, because I think if I did, I would be selling out on my morals and ethics, and my platform would be for no purpose other than ego and narcissism. So I think that it's important to have causes that you care about enough to actually like put your heart into and like be prepared to deal with the backlash that follows. Because yeah, people get mad. Caring about people is very controversial, to say the least. But yeah, anyways, thank you everyone for listening to my discussion on why I hate billionaires 101. And also why they are the crux of a lot of the issues we experience. And yeah, um, but what I would encourage people to do in your advocacy is just like hold true to yourself and have an internal compass that is like so set that you aren't going to be swayed by other people enforcing their opinions on you unless they're actually like well thought out and they pose a good argument. Like nothing someone says should make you feel inferior if you truly believe in what you're advocating for and what you're doing. Perspectives that don't hold true to like your outlook on life shouldn't really rock your boat or like alter the way that you approach things. With that said, like you should always be open to changing your perspective if information shows need for it. But like I think it's really important to be confident enough in yourself and your own decision making that you can't be easily influenced by other people who try to make you feel inferior. And this isn't to say that you will never be impacted by people saying shitty, mean things about you, but like it shouldn't change how you approach the things that are important to you. You shouldn't let it alter how you show up in life, because you'll regret it in the future. Like don't sell out your morals and ethics and who you are for a person to appease people that don't like you. Um because like even if you do jump through every hoop that the world sets up for you, there's still going to be people that don't like you. But like more importantly, if you sway that far away from being yourself, you're not going to like yourself, and you're going to lose yourself in the pursuit of trying to people please and like be the type of person that you think is most palatable to other people. And it's not worth it. It really isn't. I did that for a lot of my younger years, and I'm quite frankly finished with being like that. And the people who like me for who I am, and that's great. And it makes like the crowd around you and like the people that you keep close to you all the more valuable, because they see you for who you are rather than seeing you for the mask that you're wearing to please them. So, yeah, stay true to yourself. Have like a support group of people whose opinion you trust and friends who hold you accountable for your decisions and who also believe in you and celebrate your wins and who don't respond to your wins and like the highs and lows. They don't respond with jealousy or contempt. That they're actually just like there for you for being who you are. And yeah, that's what I've tried to do with curating my following, to be quite frank. Like, I would rather have like 3 followers that care about people and are following me for me than have like a million people who are following me for a persona that I put on for the online. Because yeah, I'm not here to act. I'm not an actor. I'm a person with a life and opinions, and I intend to maintain that integrity and belief system regardless of whether or not people like it, because it's not my job to be liked by any specific person. It's their job to curate their own universe and the people they surround themselves with in a way that feels good to them. And how they feel about me or how anyone feels about you, that's not your problem. That's none of your business. Um, it's not your job to be liked by everybody. You're not a product. You're like a person. So stay true to yourself. And yeah, like I know it can be hard to sway and go against the grain in the horse world, because people will lash out at you literally for just minding your own business and doing your thing. Um, but again, that says more about them than it does about you. If someone can't watch you hitting a clicker and feeding your horse a cookie without being enraged by it, imagine how unhappy of a person they have to be like that. Because like that is crazy. Um, so don't let people like that make you feel bad about themselves, because I guarantee, however bad they make you feel, I guarantee you they are feeling worse about themselves. And the more authentically you kind of own who you are as a person, the more you're going to anger people who are denying their authenticity and are putting on a show to be liked by populations of people who don't actually care about them. And yeah, they don't like people who are comfortable being themselves, because it's highlighting a part of them that they haven't been able to capture yet, which is sad. But don't let people like that make you become one of them, because you'll always be happier being the person that you feel good about than trying to be something that someone else feels good about. But yeah, so feed your horse the cookies, even if your barn owner makes fun of you, even if your peers make fun of you. Feed your horse the cookies, press your clicker, do whatever you want. Like if you don't like showing horses, don't show. If you don't value like maintaining, like if you like any specific discipline and you just like pleasure riding and you like going for trail rides and shit, do that. There's literally no correct way to be an equestrian and no correct way to be a good horse person other than not being a piece of shit to your horse. That is the only thing. Um, so yeah, do whatever you want. Like the value system that we have created in the horse world that's perpetuated by so many people online is inherently elitist. And if you buy into that value system, you are helping that elitism continue. So don't. Um, you can be a good horse person and a valuable, well-educated horse person who knows their shit without showing, without riding with anyone who's like a prevalent person, and without even having people know who you are. You don't need to be famous to be valuable. Um, and people value status and money more than they value ethics in the horse world in a lot of cases. So it's just, you don't need to do any of that. Just do whatever you want. It's actually really nice. Like I enjoy my horses way more now that I'm just doing whatever I want. It's way more fun. Like I have a way better time. I'm way less stressed. My anxiety is at the lowest it's ever been. And like I have refound my love for horses, because for a while there, like I was getting so burnt out that I straight up was not enjoying myself at all with my horses. Um, and like I would get frustrated a lot easier, and it made me upset with myself because I knew I was getting frustrated too easily. But it was because I was just so burnt out. I wasn't happy. I wasn't showing up for my horses in the way that was authentic to me. Um, and I made that mistake for so many years, trying to fulfill like what I thought were my own personal goals, but were really actually influenced what I thought other people would like. And ever since I threw that out, it's been fucking great. It's been awesome. So, yeah, like today I walked down to my horses in the sun. They all got their vaccines and stuff yesterday, so I didn't do anything with them because I wasn't they might not be feeling great. But I put mud in their feet, like field paste, brushed them, hung out, fed them, chilled, and just yeah, just had a nice time. And when I am working with them and training them, the other thing that's super nice is like not having any specific timeline. Which I'm sure a lot of people have noticed when they ask me like, "What are your plans with so and so?" It's like, I don't know. Going with the flow, letting the universe decide how this is going to unfold. Like I can have like an idea of the direction that I want to head, I guess, but I don't have like any hard plans. Like there's no need to, because like what's the rush? I'm just gonna like do my thing. Like people are like, "Oh, what are your plans with Banksy? When are you gonna show him?" I don't know. When I feel like it and when he's ready for it. When are you gonna jump him? I don't know. When I feel like it and when I feel he's ready for it. And like, like it's like there doesn't have to be any hard timeline. Like I don't know. Like I'm not fulfilling a quota. I'm just enjoying my horses and living my life. So it's freeing as soon as you start to welcome that more and you're just like, okay, cool. Like I can actually do what I want and not have to worry about meeting certain goalposts at a specific time. Um, and I don't care. And I think that also throws a lot of people for a loop because if they try to criticize you using the value system that they uphold themselves to, um, then they get thrown off when it isn't something you value. Like I've had people criticize my show record for years, and it's like it used to bother me because a large part of the reason I wasn't showing a lot was because I couldn't afford it and like my family didn't have the money to. And then since that was how I valued myself, it made me feel like absolute garbage. But now it's like if people say it, it's like, okay, cool. Like you're just telling on yourself for saying that this is like how you value people's worthiness, even though like all of the skills that you show off at shows were obtained outside of the show ring, largely in your lessons and in your time practicing outside of the show. So it's like, okay, cool. Um, yeah, good for everybody that's clicker training. It's nice. I hope you had good weather too, because sometimes when the weather sucks, it's just like a bummer. But yeah, so I don't know. You do you. And also, like, only you can set up how you value yourself. No one else gets jurisdiction over that. So they try to, like, demolish how you value yourself using their own value system. Don't let them. They can't. They don't get to choose how much you're worth. No one does. You get to value yourself. It doesn't matter what people think. And that's still something that I am learning is that it doesn't matter what people think, but it's something that the more I practice it, the better I'm getting at it. Because it's like, who fucking cares if you look stupid? Who cares if they don't think you're good enough? Like, who cares? It doesn't matter. Especially for people that you're like never going to see in person at all. Or if you do see them in person, you're not going to see again. Or even if you do, you don't respect or agree with. So I operate with the mindset of who cares? Who cares? Because you shouldn't. You shouldn't. It's way better, especially if you have chronic social anxiety like me. I'm still practicing it in group situations that are like outside of the horse world because the horse world's a place where I feel the most at home and comfortable, generally speaking. But humaning and being perceived by people in public is something that I am still learning. But I'm trying to own it and just be like, who cares if someone doesn't like me? If they don't like me, it's like, I'll find someone who will. Who cares? You know? So, anyways, thank you everyone for listening. I haven't done a TikTok live in a while, so thank you to the people who joined. This live is going to get saved on my YouTube channel, so if you came in late and want to watch the beginning of it, you can check it out on my YouTube channel. And yeah, I'm going to try to do more live discussions and like podcasts and stuff. But it kind of just depends on when I feel like it. Because when my executive dysfunction is executive dysfunctioning, then I'm not going to do anything other than the bare minimum of what I have to do, responsibility wise. So yeah. But if it's not executive dysfunctioning, then I can be super productive and like just slam out a bunch of videos all in one day. Like the amount of videos that I have queued ready to go on YouTube, astronomical. Never have had it like that before, but I like edited so many videos in the span of like a few days that like I just queued them all. And it's great. So anyways, thank you for listening, everyone. Have a great night. And yeah, if you want to watch the whole entirety of this live, it will be on my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Shelby Dennis, or you can look up Milestone Equestrian and it should come up. But yeah, you can check it out there. Also, I have a Facebook page where I post a lot of like blog style, like article type posts. And that's just Milestone Equestrian as well. So you can check that out, and bye.